Thoughts are rolling all the time. Shake 'em loose from your mind. Stir them up, pull one out. That's what the thought bowl's all about. Ideas keep rambling, rolling round. Some dark, some heavy, some full of sound. Museums, tunnels, curiosity shops. Birthday presents, Lincoln logs, four-way stops. Future grandkids, Morris dancers, words that rhyme. Sesame Street, puppets moving back in time. Ideas keep rambling, floating by. Head full of questions, like a kid asking why.
Good afternoon. You are listening to the Thought Bowl. I am Pete.
I'm Heather.
Hey, Heather. How you doing?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Watching the rain fall here in Takoma Park.
Oh,
Is it raining out
raining
there,
there.
where you're at?
no, I'm at my mom's in West Virginia just for the day, and it is actually sunny. There might be some clouds, but it's not. I was surprised because I thought it was going to be stormy today, but I guess I was not wrong.
No.
Just in the wrong place.
Yeah.
We're having like an all-day long D&D game. And
Oh.
also Christmas in July and August. But
Uh-huh.
very low-key.
Ooh.
Very low-key.
So who's the dungeon master?
My brother,
Oh,
Eric.
is that always the case? He's
Yeah.
always the dungeon master?
He's he's a really good dungeon master, and I was just thinking it's so cool. He started this game virtually back in 2019. I think we're coming up on 3 years of it, so maybe 2018. And so it was so cool that we had this already in place during the pandemic. But every now and then, we try to get together and actually do it in person, which we couldn't do last year, and this is the first time able to do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So does your brother roll the dice for everyone, or does everyone still do their own dice roll?
Everyone does their own dice roll. When we do it virtually, there's a way you can, if you don't actually have dice, you can, there's like a virtual dice roll you can do. I think on D&D and Beyond or some site like that.
Yeah, I would do
But
that. I don't know if I
have
would
that.
trust everyone, to be honest, about what they rolled. So, I mean, I guess within a family,
Right.
but if I was just playing with regular.
Yeah. So I asked my husband, I asked Mike to play my character while I called in and to the show, and he's like, I don't know anything about what's going on. I said, my character normally doesn't either. He's very spacey. He's an Arakakra, which means he's like a bird-type guy, and because I have not played as much D&D in my life, although my family has, I'm usually like having to ask a lot of questions and a little bit of wandering off, and I'm not sure what's going on. So I'm like, you can do it at least as well as I am. It's fine.
I hope Mike does not kill your character. I hope your character is still alive when.
I hope so.
When
I
you
hope so. We were
return.
just meeting a hobgoblin, and my character just got that ability to speak to goblins.
Yeah, so hopefully your character survives the phone
Yeah,
call,
we'll
so.
see.
Hey, so later in about 15 minutes, we're going to have Amber Hennessy call in and talk about her book, The Best Dog I Never Owned, which is a great title.
This is such a cool book. I'm holding it right now, looking at it, and it's a perfect length. It's such an easy, fun read,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also beautiful. I really like the cover. I haven't looked to see who did the painting of the artwork of like this sunlit forest with the dog that represents her dog, I'm sure,
Mm-hmm.
on the cover there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've met Baxter. Well, it's kind of hard to, I mean, I don't know how far you've gotten, but they have Baxter and another dog, and this other dog is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And my attention is just constantly drawn to that huge dog. So I've probably had seen Baxter, but I was just so fascinated with the giant Marmaduke-size other dog that they had that I couldn't even remember seeing Baxter at any point.
Was that one named Irie?
Yes.
Irie, okay. Yeah, these sound like great dogs. And at one point in the book, Amber goes over, mentions like a list of all the dogs that she and Baxter and fostered together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty long.
Yeah.
And I like that. It sounds like Baxter was a good dog host. Like he very much knew that he was the permanent dog and that these were guests and should be treated well and played with. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I really like the size of the print because I'm struggling with my eyesight as far as like reading is concerned. So the print was a great size also. So I felt like, so other times I've been like, oh, I don't feel like adjusting my eyes or putting on reading glasses over my regular glasses. But the print was big enough that I could just, read them with my regular glasses.
Yeah. Oh, there's a nice quote in the beginning of it here from Bertrand Russell that says, "A dog cannot relate his autobiography, however eloquently he may bark. He cannot tell you that his parents were honest, though poor."
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. How about you? Have you owned any dogs?
I have had
Or had any dogs? You say owned.
Yeah, I've had one dog. I haven't had a lot. I had one dog that I got when I was pregnant with my now about to be 26-year-old, and that dog ended up getting unofficially adopted by my in-laws when they saw that I was kind of overwhelmed with a 4-year-old and a baby and a puppy, and trying to go to school and everything. And they took that dog for a visit and ended up keeping her. But,
okay.
But so it worked out really well. They had another dog too, and we got to keep seeing her, but I didn't have to be overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And she's had dogs all her life. So, in fact, they're in Kentucky now, and they have at least 2 dogs that are there now.
Oh, okay.
But, and that's Trainee was the one that she lived to be at least about as old as Baxter, I think, about 12.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter, Ruth, has a foster dog, or she fostered dogs, and now she has one that she adopted.
Oh, okay.
So I want to give her this book, or get her a copy.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never had any dogs. We did have 2 runaway dogs that my grandparents took in for a few days when I was living with them when I was about maybe 11 or 12 years old. And I think we were going to keep the dogs, or at least one of them, if the owners didn't show up. But it was a big, giant sheepdog.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they had a yard and everything, so not enough room for the sheepdog to run around. But after, it was a while. It was like 10 days. Then the owners finally came to pick up this giant sheepdog.
Oh, did you have fun together?
Oh, yeah. I was kind of hoping. Because I kind of figured after a week, I was like, they're probably not, someone's probably not going to come by. But yeah, like 10 days later. came by and gave us $50. So.
Oh, for taking care of it.
Yeah, he probably ate $50 worth of food, so it was probably
I'm sure.
appropriate.
I'm sure. Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking at pictures of some of the dogs that my mom grew up with, and in Tennessee, and their dogs, they didn't like live outside constantly. Like they came in, but they pretty much, I think the cats did live outside and were just fed, and the dogs spent most of the day like outside on the mountain. I have to ask her. I mean, they could come in. It wasn't like they had to stay outside, but the idea was they were pretty much outside animals, and they didn't get dog food. They fed them like the breakfast, like you would feed pigs, like you've got your scrambled eggs and bacon and things left over, and after breakfast you scrape the pans into a dish and give it to the dogs.
Wow.
Yeah. So they had a lot of puppies. There's one picture where it has like two dogs like sitting outside, and each of them is surrounded by little puppies. And I think there's they're a mix of stuff, but maybe some golden retriever in there, and they look really, really cute, but also like kind of wild. Like they're looking up at the photographer like, yes, are you interrupting our little gathering we're having here?
Yeah, the dogs I dog sat for last year were like kind of half wild and half domesticated dogs, so it seemed like they would constantly flip back and forth in between. Because they pretty much were just outside on a whole lot of land, but they still had the ability to come inside, especially at nighttime. So yeah, like seemed like when they were inside, they kind of were like, oh, but they were not, as domesticated as you would think dogs. I mean, they weren't violent or anything like that, but it just kind of
right. They just still had some of their
wild,
ways.
like outside like tendencies and stuff.
Because they're definitely, they're pack animals, so they have all this structure that I guess when you're training a dog, which I was not good at doing when I tried, but I guess you're have to put yourself in that structure and put yourself in a position of authority or figure out where you are in the pack, and you have to be above the dog.
Yeah.
Like Ruth's dog that she adopted, she took him to training when she brought him home, and she wanted to treat him so nice, and she did, but she was letting him like have his way with the couch and the bed, and so he started thinking, oh, I must be
the leader of the pack,
top dog here, clearly, because I get to sit on the couch whenever I want, and started doing a little growls when someone else would try to sit. So she took him to a trainer, and they worked with that, and it just took a little effort. It wasn't like she had to, she didn't have to scold him or anything, just had to, be consistent with like, no, you only get on there when I say you can. Right.
Yeah, my friend has a Doberman, a German Shepherd puppy. Well, it's pretty, getting pretty big now, even at a year old. And yeah, it's just really off the hook as far as barking and hyperactivity and jumping on people. I mean, it's gotten better in the past month, but I'm still pretty fearful when I go over there.
Yeah.
And they live right across the street from Jose, so I'm sure you know who they are.
Oh, okay. I was just thinking of Jose's and Mary's dog. One of their dogs is the author that if you're listening, you'll be hearing Pete interviewing in just a little bit. Amber Hennessy, she mentions about dogs named Lucky. I think one of the dogs that she fostered was named Lucky, and she renamed it, I think, Danny Boy, because said no dog. The shelter people had told her no dog named Lucky is really lucky.
Right.
But
It's an
Mary
ironic
and Jose
name.
have one named Lucky.
Oh.
That it is blind and deaf, but it is very lucky and very sweet. It's so sweet natured and landed with them. So that's the exception, I guess.
Yes, the exception to the lucky rule.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in, and I'll let you get back to your D&D game and hope Mike didn't kill your character.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, and thanks for sharing this book with me. And looking forward to hearing the interview later.
Okay. Talk to you later, Heather.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
All right. So we have Amber. She's going to call it in a few minutes. So before that, I'm going to play. She wants to hear some go-go music. Amber did, because she lived in D.C., and that was kind of an omnipresent sound on the corner of Florida and Georgia Avenue. And this song is Bustin' Loose because Baxter used to bust loose all the time. That was Chuck Brown with Bustin' Loose. You're listening to the Thought Bowl. And I am Pete, and I do believe we have Amber on the phone. Are you there, Amber?
Hello, yes.
Oh, good. Always worried about technical stuff with people calling in, but you did it successfully. So how are you doing today?
Great. I think I love your song choice.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I figured Baxter was constantly busting loose in the book. So
he really was.
I figured that was appropriate. So before we jump into the book, I guess the most important question, last name is Hennessy. Any relation to the Hennessy liquor empire?
Sadly, no.
No.
We do not get any kind of
No residual checks?
kickbacks
No.
or royalties. No. But we do drink it on occasion.
So we call this early segment, when a guest comes on, the superhero origin story. So where were you born and what brought you to the Washington, D.C. area?
Well, I'm from Utica, New York. So born and raised there, upstate New York, and I talk about it a fair amount in the book itself. My parents are still up there. My sister is still there. So, I mean, I really love going back up there. It's definitely a different pace of life, and, you know, it's more rural and just kind of, it's definitely a lot more snow, though, so I don't miss that part.
Like Buffalo, Rochester type of snow?
Yes, it's right along that line.
Oh, okay.
So. Yeah. So then I went to Cornell University for my degree, and then while I was studying there, I majored in communication, and so then I was studying survey design and kind of just polling, and I got interested in all of that. So that's actually what led me down to the D.C. area, where I started working at the Census Bureau.
Oh, okay.
And I've been here ever since, about 16 years now. I've been down in the general D.C. area. So if you read the book, it kind of talks about my different moves, and I lived in D.C., and then I moved to Takoma Park, and then I moved to Greenbelt, ultimately, and so I'm still in Greenbelt.
Oh, okay. So the book is called The Best Dog I Never Owned, and so when did you, I guess everyone has, I don't know if everyone, but a lot of people have aspirations to sit down and, you know, bang out a book, a novel, a memoir, or something, but 99% of the people don't complete the task. How did you jump into this, and what did you set little goals as far as writing a certain amount in the course of the time, or did you just give yourself, you know, this could take a year, this could take 7 years, but I'm going to write this? Which approach did you take?
Oh, my gosh. I would not have lasted if it took 7 years. No, yeah. So, I mean, part of it is pandemic related, right? Like, we're all locked down at home, so there's nothing else, you know, going on so much, so there's fewer distractions. But definitely when I started doing this, I was just journaling for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I do talk about this a little bit in the intro. Like, I was so broken up and sad about the way that his passing and the way that he died. And it was just really heart-wrenching for me. So I was trying to write through some of his, my dog's best memories. And then I realized, as I was going, that I really had a lot more to say than, and that his story should be shared.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason that I kind of took a step back. First thing I did at that point was make an outline. So I kind of outlined the key stories of our life together. And from there, I just kept, doing the work and writing. And my husband, Andrew, will tell you, I was getting up at all hours of the night to just, it was a story that had to come out of me. And, it wasn't it was a lot of work. When I got to the point where I thought I was done, I decided to get some outside feedback because I think that's really important. I didn't know if it was just all what I thought was interesting or if other people would think it was interesting too.
Mm-hmm.
So one resource I had was John Cleese wrote this really short little book. It's called Creativity, A Short and Cheerful Guide. And so he asks 4 questions when he's seeking a second opinion from someone. So I'll just read the questions to you if you'd like to hear that.
Yeah.
So the questions were, number 1 was, where were you bored?
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 was, where could you not understand what was going on? Question number 3 was, where did you not find things credible? And question number 4 was there anything that you found emotionally confusing? And so he uses those questions kind of as a sounding board to get outside feedback, and then he tells you right away to listen to what people say, but continue to do your own thing and fix it the way that you think it needs to be fixed. Don't go with the way that they think needs to be fixed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, those are some pretty honest, deep, brutal questions. I mean, asking where, you read my book, where were you bored? I mean, that's a hard.
Yeah, exactly. So, I hired people over on an internet platform. I think it's called Upwork, but it's basically like a freelancing website. There's a few different websites, but you can connect with people online who you've never met before, so they don't have any investment in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I basically sent the draft at that point to a couple of people and said, please answer these questions for me, as well as, point out anything else that you think was obviously wrong or wasn't working. And I got some really good feedback from doing that. And I'm really glad that I took that step, and just basically at the point where I thought I was done, I was only halfway done.
Uh-huh.
So then when I got that feedback back, I then had to spend another couple months rearranging the flow and fixing different parts of it. And then when I was really, really done and ready to, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm done. But then I had all of these other hurdles to get through, which was basically formatting and figuring out what size the book would be. And Pete, earlier you mentioned the size of the font.
Mm-hmm.
That was a decision that had to be made. Even the types of font that we had to decide on. I write the book from my perspective and from my dog's perspective. So Baxter has a different font in the book when he's talking,
mm-hmm.
because I was trying to differentiate the conversation that was going on, or what was going on in his head versus the way I was perceiving it.
Right.
So once we got through all of that, then it was actually fully done. So, and I also had to learn about ISBN numbers, and do I need a barcode, and all of a huge amount of things that luckily I was able to get a lot of help from people who are professionals who do this for a living,
mm-hmm.
but because I am certainly not a professional in writing at all, but by hiring out help where I needed it, even with the cover illustration, I didn't want a picture of Baxter because I didn't want it to be about specifically Baxter, but I wanted it to be about the idea of this dog, and it could be anybody's dog.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I really wanted an illustration. And so I worked with a graphic designer who took a picture that I had of Baxter, and she turned it into this beautiful illustration for the book. So
that's
a lot of help. That's what I can say.
And so you're saying this is, so if the pandemic didn't happen, you don't think you would have done this at all? Possibly not, or?
No, I don't think that is necessarily true, but I think it definitely helped me focus my time.
Mm-hmm. So. And how many, so the parts where it's Baxter's voice, did you have that initially, or is that something you added in later?
I didn't have it initially, so and I never actually let my husband Andrew read the book until it was published.
Mm-hmm.
But he recommended that I should have some parts from Baxter's point of view because, just around the house, like you mentioned earlier, we have dogs. We have different voices for all of our dogs. Mm-hmm. So he mentioned that I should really have a part of the book that is coming from Baxter's perspective. And so then that was another phase where I had to go back in and rewrite certain, and I could see where certain stories could easily integrate that. So that's kind of where I put it back. I had to go back and do some rework on that part.
Mm-hmm. So you had to basically find those sections where Baxter's dialogue fit in. Yeah.
Basically, I had the outline and I had all the stories written. So then from there, I was able to go back and find parts where Baxter could actually add something.
Mm-hmm.
So the book, it started out from a journal entry, and then it just got longer and longer, and eventually turned into what I was able to publish. Another thing I'll mention is that I did all of this work without an internet connection, so I was very deliberate about that. I made sure I didn't have the internet turned on the laptop that I was working on because that was so easily distracting, and it's so easy to just be working along and then just click over and what's going on social media?
Right. Yeah, it starts out like, let me look up this fact about dogs. Then you go down this this
so
path
I
of
had
looking at stuff
to
that's
look
distracting.
up a number of things to verify for the book, and I would wait. I would make a note of it, and then I would say, I need to look up this internet fact.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would kind of set it aside until I wasn't writing anymore actively, and then I would look up the information. Otherwise, I would have gotten way bogged down in reading about vultures and that kind of thing.
And what set of skills do you think that you have that really helped you with this process, whether, organizational skills or self-discipline or...
It's hard to say. I mean, I think I've always been drawn to writing, so that part came naturally to me. Like, it wasn't a struggle to actually sit down and start writing.
Right.
And then certainly the editing process and everything, I felt very comfortable in that part.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the feedback, like you said, it was a little bit brutal, but it was necessary in order to make something that people would actually want to read.
Right. And, in fact, you have a chapter that you kind of wanted to read on the air. So...
Yeah, I think so. I would love to do that.
Okay. So what chapter is this in the book?
Okay. So the setup to the chapter is that I had I'm living in D.C., and I've recently gotten my own apartment for the first time in my life and adopted this dog who is turning out to be way more than I was expecting. And he's a herding dog, so we think he's like either a border collie or an Australian cattle dog or somewhere along those lines, maybe an Australian Kelpie, like definitely a working dog.
Mm-hmm.
I never did a DNA test on him to know for sure what kind of dog he was, but he definitely had those genes in him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the chapter is called Take Me to Church, and it's about a 4-minute read, so come along with me. So, during the early 2000s, gentrification was spreading across D.C. like a winding river, snaking up one street partway before turning and skipping over the next few blocks. My apartment stood on one such demarcating line. Around my neighborhood, carriage houses and back alleyways were being converted into luxury studio apartments, and brand new condos were built inside old brick buildings, while formerly stately mansions were abandoned and property tax arrears to crumble. Go-go music pumped out proudly from the Metro PCS corner store, lifting the city's spirit for blocks. Bodegas opened up to sell fresh fruits and vegetables to fill in some of the food desert, since the closest grocery store was several miles away. A new specialty coffee shop was quickly becoming the prime neighborhood meetup spot among the young career-minded cohort. Walking east from my front steps, row houses and condos were starting to sell for exorbitant prices, fully remodeled with the latest finishes and features. Walking west from my apartment and occupying most of the same block was a long stretch of city-owned housing, where old window unit air conditioners were unable to keep pace with the heavy D.C. summers. Directly in between these two clashing extremes, I had rented the top floor of a simple 2-story 1940s brick freestanding house with a fenced yard for a reasonable price. Across the street was a condemned school, and I'd watch with mild concern where unsupervised children from up the street scrambled over the high fence to enjoy the abandoned play equipment. Next door to the house was a black Pentecostal church, the True Grace Church of Jesus Christ. Throughout the week, especially on Sunday mornings, the church would come alive with organ music and the Holy Spirit. I loved singing along through my open kitchen windows to the gospel music. The buildings were so close together and the speakers so powerful that I could even take in the sermon from my small back patio. The ladies and gentlemen attending the church always wore their Sunday best. Pastel hats with matching skirt suits for the women, and the men in perfectly tailored suits with bright pops of colorful ties and pocket squares. On a sunny summer Sunday morning, I'd most often be seen in my stinky jogging gear. One such morning, after church had played the recessional and the crowd was starting to filter outside for a sidewalk fellowship before heading home, a surprised cry went up from the gathered parishioners. I looked down from my second-story window, at first in interest, and then in horror, as Baxter ran circles around and through the crowd, then up the steps, straight into the church. He must have escaped the yard through the hole in the fence and was immediately drawn to all the activity on the street. Shamefaced, I leapt up and ran outside as quickly as I could fly, thoughts swirling around the larger context of gentrification and a historically black neighborhood, and the darker side of the use of dogs as tools of intimidation and control. As soon as I was out on the street, Baxter popped out from the church and ran another tight circle around the startled crowd and then back to my call. Here, though, he wasn't aggressive or lunging or even rattled. No, the herding dog in his genes was driving the surge. He playfully circled the flock again, letting loose a few happy barks full of joy for his newly discovered calling. Accurately assessing my predicament, a woman in the group took pity on my bright red face, which was glaring and yelling at my uncontrolled dog. In good humor, she yelled out over the crowd at full volume, "He came to get saved." The congregation around her laughed, and with only one tail tucked, the other waving quite proudly, Baxter and I hustled back inside. So, that's it.
Oh, that's one of my favorite chapters. I can just visualize the whole thing happening.
Oh, I'm still embarrassed thinking about it.
So it kind of seems like Baxter was kind of hard to keep. I mean, these escapes, were they commonplace? Did you constantly have to be aware at all times, like where Baxter was?
He was, I mean, definitely when he was younger, it was much more of a challenge. And I think anybody who's ever had a dog or known a dog knows that younger dogs are definitely more rambunctious and want to get into trouble than, when he gets older, when the dogs get older. So it's certainly calmed down. I don't think he ever escaped from me in Greenbelt, but he definitely escaped a couple times in Takoma Park. So I'm sorry if he chased anyone who's listening. But he never was aggressive or, I wasn't worried about it in that way, except for he was about a 45-pound dog, so he was certainly scary.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't know him.
Yeah. One of the most, I guess, other fascinating things about the book, it's really interesting reading a book and the places that, you're talking about, whether it's, whether it's your house in Greenbelt or whether it's a specific playground in Greenbelt. So that was a real, kind of really felt like really immersed inside the book.
Oh, thank you. Hopefully others who don't know those places will feel also immersed. But I tried to be as specific as possible just because I always enjoy it when I'm reading a book and they mention a street, say, that I have walked on, and I'm like, I know that street.
Yeah. And we have a listener wrote in with 2 questions.
Okay.
Do you know about the underground tunnel from Takoma Park to Old Greenbelt?
I can confirm that such a tunnel exists, but it only goes in one direction, and I can't reveal which direction that is.
Oh, wow. Interesting. And the other question this person has, what's the best reggae band in D.C.?
I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, okay. So I'm curious about this underground. I'm going to find this underground. So I know you're not going to say which direction does it go, but what does it take you from?
It's of travel, It's a one-way portal, though.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay. So is this like magical? It's like Alice in Wonderland or something, or?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Once you get in it, there's no turning back.
And one of the things I found curious about. So would you consider yourself an animal activist or advocate?
I'm certainly an animal advocate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an animal activist, and I definitely respect the work that they do, and I think it's important work. All of the work that's going on now around legal guardianship of animals and just taking basic fair care of livestock, I think is definitely, there's good work going on there. But I am not involved in that movement, so to say. But I'm definitely always will be an advocate for companion animals and that they have just excellent treatment throughout their lives. If I don't necessarily know, I'm not necessarily involved in those kinds of on-the-ground work. But I so appreciate the work that rescues do, and I think they're doing an amazing job.
Okay. And you mentioned, in the book, I forget which organization it was. Was it the Humane Society of D.C., the place that closed?
So Baxter came from the Washington Humane Society, which closed, and it actually merged with longtime Takoma Park residents will recognize WARL, which was the Washington Animal Rescue League on Oglethorpe Street. So they have a beautiful facility. I don't know if you've ever stepped in there, but it's gorgeous what they have for the dogs and cats. So they merged with Washington Humane Society. So now they're the Humane Rescue Alliance.
Okay.
So they have that facility on Oglethorpe, and then they still have the facility on New York Ave, which used to be part of the Washington Humane Society.
Mm-hmm.
So Baxter did not come from either of those places. He came from a third location, which is the one that I talk about as kind of not ideal setup, I would say, for the dogs. The Humane Rescue Alliance continues to do just really critical life-saving work in D.C., and they're actually doing a lot, which I love, about keeping pets with their families. So I think a big problem that maybe isn't widely known enough is that people will give up pets because either the lease doesn't allow it or they have to move. The Humane Rescue Alliance is actually doing a lot they'll even hold pets for people if they're in the process of moving, so that they can eventually get the pets back. So I think, and they also have things like a food pantry for pets. If you can't afford the cost of the food or different medications, like they're really amazing.
And do you know if either that organization or other organizations do outreaches? Like, one thing I've seen recently is hotels stating whether they accept dogs. People on vacation. A lot of times they're like, "Oh, I can't go on vacation because I don't want to leave my dog somewhere." So I see a lot more hotels advertising that they do accept. Do you know whether that was something an organization reached out to hotels, or they just maybe realized from a business perspective that was kind of a good idea?
Yeah, I have no idea. I think it's probably more of a trend. I certainly feel that way. As you mentioned, I have a 175-pound Irish Wolfhound now, and as well as a second dog, and that's certainly a concern on my mind, as I can't really take him places, even though he's a great dog, but just in general, generally pets are not so welcome. So.
Yeah, because I imagine a hotel that advertises...
The trend is changing.
Yeah. I imagine a hotel that advertises, "We accept dogs," and you showed up with your dog. They might say, "Oh, we didn't think your dog would be that big."
I think they would be thrilled to see him. But that's a conversation you want to have before you leave the house.
Yeah. Wow, 175 pounds. That's more than I weigh. That's wild. And so, so you've written your book now, and it's been published. When did it officially come out in print?
I published it, so I self-published. July 5th was the official date.
Okay, so
it's taken me a while to get the printed copies. There's been a bit of a backlog with actually getting the physical books. And then it's also available in a EPUB, so like a Kindle format. And you can get that at any online bookseller. And then I also have the physical copies available at the Big Bad Wolf in Takoma Park. So thank you for Penny and Julie, the co-owners there. Thank you for supporting my book and posting. You can buy the physical copies there. And it's also available at the Greenbelt Co-op supermarket.
Oh, that's neat. So are you...
So it was important to me that I had a local option where people could buy the book without having to go through online stuff.
Right. And do you have another book in you, do you think?
Absolutely, yeah, I do. So I have a children's book I've been thinking about for Irie, my Irish Wolfhound. And I think his book will be a children's book. And yeah, I think every dog I could probably write an entire book about. I'm excited about this new, path that I've
stumbled into, and I thank Baxter for taking me here.
Oh, yeah. And any tips, so someone that's out there that kind of hears this and gets inspired, just like 2 or 3 tips you want to give them in the process, what would you say?
I guess the main tip is just do the work and show up, and even if you don't feel like you have a story in you, just start writing and see where it goes. That's the main thing that I started to do, and it wasn't until I had been writing for a good bit that I realized that this really was a whole story.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's the main thing. And then also set deadlines for yourself. So you can try to say, I want to get such and such number of pages in or such number of words. I didn't try to go to any certain word count necessarily. I tried to not get trapped or bogged down in that, but I tried to definitely set deadlines for myself as far as I want to get a draft that people could read by a certain date, and then I wanted to get the cover art figured out by a certain date. So all of those pieces were kind of whirling in my brain at the same time while I was working along with writing and editing and revising. And I guess the last piece of advice I would say that I got from John Cleese, who he also credits to, I think, Faulkner, which was kill your darling, which is that maybe you're working on something and ultimately it doesn't fit with the full narrative that you've built around it. You just have to jettison that part, and it might be a great little side story. Maybe it's something else, but if it doesn't fit in the book itself, then it's got to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely cut a lot of pieces of Baxter's story that maybe didn't quite fit with the full narrative of where I was trying to go.
That's fantastic advice. So thanks Amber. We've been listening to Amber Hennessy. She's been talking about her recently published book, The Best Dog I Never Owned. So thanks again, Amber, for calling in.
Thank you, Pete. This was amazing and scary, but also great. And thank you to your co-host, Heather. So I really appreciate you all.
All right, thank you. So take care and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Okay. You too.
All right, that was Amber Hennessy and her book, talking about her book, The Best Dog I Never Owned. So we have Roadside Attractions with Brian coming up here in a few minutes. Then at 6 p.m., we have Roots and Wings, and we have programming 24 hours a day here. So continue listening and leave you here with 2 dog-related songs. This is More Like My Dog by Amy White, and then The Dogs, They Really Miss You. So stay tuned for Roadside Attractions.